I was born into an extremely wealthy family. My father could easily land a spot in the Forbes 400 list, but you'll never see his name there. Chances are you've never heard of my great-grandfather either. He passed away recently at the age of 106, and it's a time I've always dreaded. It's not because I'm close to him. In fact, I only met him a handful of times. It's what he left behind that's been keeping me up at night. Upon his passing, I've been gifted his 33,300 square foot mansion. The staff maintain the place is still fully intact, and I've been told they jubilantly await my arrival. My own sentiments, however, are quite the opposite. I'm especially concerned about coming face to face with his longtime butler, Sam. To put it simply, Sam was my great-grandfather's butler for over 80 years, and he doesn't look a day over 30. The rest of the staff are also seemingly ageless. I've grown up around servants. It wasn't until my early teens that I started to realize that they weren't quite human. In middle school, my older brother had gotten into an argument with his history teacher. I don't know the specifics. All I know is that the next day, I overheard one of our family gardeners assuring him that Mrs. Greenhouse would no longer trouble him. A few years later, I'd learned that she'd gone missing around the same time without a trace. Like any school, the private academy I attended had bullies. I personally made my way through the school having almost no altercations. There was one day in particular, though, I saw a group of boys picking on a friend of mine beneath an oak tree. I planned to go over and do something before my own family butler appeared next to me. Such a shame those poor boys pay no mind to the consequences of their foul behavior. He gave a single whistle, and immediately the three boys stopped and walked away. Afterwards, I noticed a drastic change in the behavior of that trio. Often foul-mouthed, rowdy, and picking fights, they became docile. I wouldn't call them friendly or kind either. At lunch they would sit at a table together, eating nothing and speaking no words. I began to realize that they remained there like that throughout lunch. In class they would sit there with their hands folded on the desk. They never even moved unless the teacher called on them. They would always reply with a simple, "I don't know." These are only a few of the examples I can give. To say I grew up sheltered is an understatement. I'd never experienced rude behavior when being served at a restaurant. No teacher ever expressed disappointment whenever I missed an assignment. I once handed in a blank test and got it back with a perfect 100. I was also valedictorian of my graduating class, yet my scholastic efforts were often mediocre. Only a handful of times did I ever have something resembling an argument with someone. Within the next day or two, a member of my family's staff would assure me that the person would never bother anyone else ever again. I've played sports occasionally, but it's never been any fun. I've never been hit during dodgeball. I've never missed a basketball shot, nor was I ever tackled during soccer. While playing baseball, all I had to do was bunt a shot and walk to each base, while all the other students stood there and watched me. What fun is there in winning without a challenge? Things changed when I decided to move into a high-rise luxury apartment in a major city. For a few years I made a point of keeping my family at a distance, and their staff out of my life almost entirely. My interactions with others were finally starting to come across more normal now. People seemed more like genuine individuals, rather than the puppets I dealt with growing up. A few months back, I even tried taking up boxing. I don't consider myself a masochist by any means, but being punched for the first time felt liberating. It's been nice no longer being on a pedestal, but now I hear the call of my bloodline, beckoning for me to return. On a whim that did not seem to be my own, I find myself on my way to the mansion that was now mine. A limousine had been sent for me a few times since my grandfather's passing. Though I lived on the 21st floor, it was still intimidating to see its presence down there, knowing it wanted me. At last, I gave in, as though fate had decided to take charge. I stood outside by the water fountain. While there, the statue turned its head in my direction. It gave me a very curious stare. It wasn't until I was 7 years old that I realized inanimate objects aren't supposed to be interactive. I ignored it and headed for the door. It came as no surprise as the knob turned and the door swung open. "Right on time, Lord Zackary." It was Sam, smiling warmly at me. As always, he was sharply dressed, in a suit with a dark red tie that matched his wavy hair. "Please, allow yourself in, my lord." I gave a single nod and reluctantly took my first steps inside. It was by no means the largest mansion in which I had ever set foot. Still, there was an echo in the hall. At the moment, it was only Sam and I, though I assumed the others would be joining us soon. He led me to the main den. Despite the summer heat, the fireplace was on. The coffee table had a bevy of snacks laid out, along with cups resting on coasters. I took a seat on the couch, which reclined slightly despite me doing nothing. Sam sat in a leather chair nearby, folding one leg over the other. "We're all delighted to have you finally return home, my lord." "I really don't like that term," I replied, shaking my head. "Just Zack." "Very well, Zackary. Since it's been so long, I shall be offering you the grand tour of this wonderful home. I'm certain you will come to cherish it, just as Lord Jacob did." A cool rush of air blew past me as my great-grandfather's name was spoken. My muscles tensed for a moment as Sam smirked at me. "May I offer you a delicacy?" Sam lifted a tray with fancily crafted cookies of various flavors. I shook my head. "As you wish." He lowered the tray, then stood up and held out his hand to me. "May we begin the tour?" I shrugged and pulled myself up off the couch. Sam glanced me up and down for a few seconds before smiling again. "Let us begin." We began with our ascent upstairs. Sam felt it was best for us to work our way down to the basement. I didn't question his direction. In spite of everything, it was my plan to walk out of here and never return. Still, I was curious to learn what all I had inherited. Not counting the basement, there were 3 floors to the house. On the 3rd floor, there were 4 bedrooms, 3 restrooms, a library, a private cinema, a billiard room, as well as several secret doors. Upon passing the first of those secret doors, I stopped and stared. The lines in the wall were just barely visible. "Would you like to find out already?" Sam placed his fingers together, as though pleased with my inquisitive stare. I mean, if it is what I think it is, I won't be using this room. You can seal it off for good." I jumped back when I heard heavy knocking coming from behind the door. Sam merely smiled, as though delighted by the curiosity of a small child. "Splendid. Their voices have successfully been erased before your first encounter." "What are they?" "Concerns you need not have," he answered before glancing at the door. "You may be silent now." Immediately, the noise from behind the door ceased. "Who or what are they?" "Troublemakers." Sam grinned. "Your great-grandfather met his share of them over the century." "What happens to them in there?" "Punishment." "For how long?" "Time is not a concept where they are." "I understand how this may be upsetting, but I assure you not a soul in there deserves better. Shall we carry on?" I glanced over the secret door once more before moving along. Around the next corner, I noticed a second set of lines along the wall. Another punishment room? I anticipated more noise, but met only silence. "There is no other punishment room," said Sam. The door swung open, revealing a vast, well-lit room with a long dining table. It was deserted when Sam and I stepped inside. I placed my foot near the door, fearful it would shut. "Jacob occasionally conducted business in this room with foreign guests." The term foreign in my family means something very different. Looking around, I noticed half a dozen doors I was certain were not there when I had stepped in. "I don't plan on using this room either," I insisted, trying to conceal the nerves in my tone. "As you wish, Zackary." I was relieved to be back out in the hallway, hurrying my way from that room. "Shall I presume you will not be using any clandestine door?" "Why would I?" Sam grinned again. "Perhaps one more?" With curiosity as my weakness, I found myself accepting a peek into one more of those secret rooms. The next one had no visible lines. Instead, it was just a single silver knob sticking out of the wall. "What would you like to see behind that door?" I hesitated, staring back and forth between him and the knob. New York City." I grasped the handle. As soon as I opened the door, I found myself staring out onto a street in Manhattan. Dozens of people walked by, completely unaware of our presence. After a few seconds of observation, I shut the door once more. "Just imagine all the places you could be," Sam exclaimed. I said nothing and opened the door again. This time, I saw a tennis court with a pair of women playing. I recognized the dark-haired one and the pink hairband she always wore. "Gwen? She hasn't been performing too well lately. You may change that if you so desire." I shut the door. I don't want to bring her back into my life. "You were quite happy with her for those first 5 months." I shook my head. "She's not a toy. What we had couldn't be called a relationship. I hate the fact that I didn't let her go sooner." "Don't be so harsh on yourself, Zack. She would have been warmly welcomed into the family had you wanted her to be. She'd be at the top of her game as well. Don't you see any benefit in the gifts your family have been given?" "It's hollow. I don't want to live my life surrounded by puppets. That's all anyone else seems to be to my family. I'm done with this place." I headed to the nearest staircase, skipping every step. As soon as I turned to head down the next flight of stairs, I saw Sam standing there, with that deceptively tranquil smile. "You won't be able to reject this home forever." I continued down the stairs past him, ignoring his words. As soon as I reached the next flight, he was there once again. Jacob was reluctant at first as well. You'll come around in time. Again I ignored Sam, jumping down the last several steps. I headed towards the front door, which was nearby now. Pulling it open, I saw Sam there once again, this time standing directly in my way. Your path doesn't have to match your great-grandfather's. Consider all the good you could bring to this world if you would only accept us. I pushed Sam aside and ran past him. I didn't take time to see if the fountain statue was staring at me again. I'd spent more than enough time in that madhouse. After running up the road half a mile, I called a lift. It was a 20-minute drive back to my apartment, which I thought would give me time to sit back and ease my mind. Unfortunately, that would not come to fruition. I paid attention to the directions my driver took. I was certain he was headed back in the direction of the mansion. A few minutes later, my suspicions were confirmed, as he slowed down and pulled over. "Enjoy your stay," said the driver. I decided not to resist and stepped out of the car. He then drove off, well past the speed limit. There I was again, beginning to wonder how far I could get away from this place before ending right back at it. I tested that theory, and walked away. I expected to find myself going in circles. It was both a surprise and a relief when I noticed the beginnings of the city's skyline ahead of me. I tried not to get too excited though, still certain it would culminate in a cruel joke. I wasn't used to walking this long, but the further I could get from the mansion the better. By the time I reached downtown, I was jogging. My apartment was only a few blocks away, and my hope was growing. As soon as I entered the building, I used the stairs out of fear I'd find Sam waiting for me in the elevator. Luckily, nothing of the sort happened as I ignored the developing blisters on my feet. I arrived on the 21st floor. Making a left, I saw the door to my apartment nearby. I had an intense feeling of dread as I pulled out my key, certain someone was in there waiting for me. Slowly, I unlocked the door, opened it, and cautiously headed inside. As far as I could tell, I was safe. I wanted to be relieved, but the paranoia wasn't letting up. I went and checked every room, as well as the balcony. There was no one there. I went and stared out the window where the limo had parked every day over the past week. There was no sign of it. That night I ended up falling asleep on the couch, watching whatever looked halfway decent on Netflix. The next morning I checked the window again, but still no limo. I don't have to work for a living, and I usually cook for myself. It took another couple of days, but I was starting to feel safe again. Then one morning I woke up, finally feeling ready to leave the building again. As I grabbed a shirt out of my closet, I noticed something along the wall. A silver knob and some faint lines creating a door shape. My heart sank as I backed away from it. The sense of security I had gained was all but fully relinquished. I shut my eyes and spoke out loud. "I'll decide when I am ready." A few seconds later, I opened my eyes. The door was gone. Had I imagined it? I didn't stick around long to see if it would reappear. I was going to stay out for the day and meet up with some friends after they got out of work. As I was stepping out the front door, I heard a voice close behind me. "Have a wonderful day, Zach." I ignored it and shut the door hard. At this point, I was thinking about moving, but I know I won't be able to run for the rest of my life. You have no idea about my family or the power we hold. Just understand that one day, you may find yourself, or someone you know, acting drastically uncharacteristic, without any explanation. Chances are they might have already gotten a hold of you before, and they won't hesitate to do it again. As long as we're around, your free will is little more than an illusion.